Welcome to the first European virtual Marketo user group. Again, I said we do encourage discussion. So if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us at the slightest question that comes to mind. We'd rather address the question when it's relevant and when it's top of mind rather than having you forget it and not get to it. So let's get started. Who are we and what are we going to talk about today? So I'm excited to be here today. I consider myself the lucky one, actually. I'm Chloe Pott. I'm a senior marketing operations manager at Nexthink. I'm an American based in France, and I'm currently working for Nexthink, which is a Swiss software company. A little bit about who am I and why am I leading this Marketo user group. I'm a two-time Marketo champion, multi-time certified expert. I've stopped keeping count. And this is my first time ever hosting a VMUG meeting. And I'm a mix of emotions right now. So if I trip over my words or get nervous or don't make any sense, just bear with me as I loosen up. But a little bit more about me as a human. I've used Marketo for about 7 or 8 years now. I've also dabbled in some Eloqua, prior to the Oracle acquisition, HubSpot, Autopilot, but I don't think I need to say which one is my favorite. If at any time you'd like to reach out to me, I am active on Twitter. I put my links up there, also LinkedIn, or even shoot me an email. If you have any questions about the user group in itself, you can contact both myself and Warren, the co-hosts, on the Bevy event page. And speaking of Warren, I mentioned how lucky I am to be here with him, but Warren has actually been gracious enough to help me achieve my dream of unifying the European Marketo community together to knowledge share and to create an even bigger sense of community. And so I want to thank you, Warren, for being here, and let's hear a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, you flatter me. So thanks. Now I'm super excited to be supporting Chloe with this, and we're both super passionate around kind of supporting Marketo users in their career growth. So a little bit about me then. So I've used Marketo now in similar background to Chloe, actually. I've used Marketo now for around 7 years. I'm also lucky enough to be a Marketo champion this year as well. And until recently, I hadn't ever attended a Marketo user group, and now I've been attending them globally. And I cannot say enough like how good they are in terms of gaining knowledge, collaborating, and really just improving your career. So that's just something that we're super passionate about, and kind of why we started this. We go over to the agenda.
So now on to the good part. Today let's finish up these introductions and some house rules, but we're very excited to be joined with a colleague of mine and also I consider a dear friend, Heather Moses, who's the VP of Marketing at Nexthink. And today we're going to be talking more about the importance of bridging this gap that does exist between marketing and IT. And we have some really interesting discussion questions that we've already talked about with Heather. And if any of you have some thoughts, or if you want to add some color to some of these questions, please feel free to pipe up. Then we'd actually like to open the floor up to all of you guys who are attending, because it is a user group. Warren and I are curious to know who you are, where you're joining from. Maybe you're not really in Europe because it is a virtual meeting. So I know there's some people joining us from the US. And name one thing about you. Maybe, for example, what's your favorite Marketo feature? And lastly, based on timing, if you have any discussion questions about how you're using Marketo or any challenges you're hitting these days, something that you want to talk about, that's what a user group is for. So let's talk about it if there's anything. And again, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and let us know. So a few house rules about the user group in itself. In order to stay user focused and to remain a safe space for everyone who's joining. The goal for this user group is to learn, to network, to problem solve. And we ask that everyone who is attending just keep these three main rules in mind. This is not a sales pitch for anyone, so let's keep the self-promotion and the pitching to another location. In terms of contacting people outside of the user group, I'm not actually quite sure how this rule, what it even means, because you can't contact, how are you going to contact them if you're not in contact with them? But don't contact them outside of the user group without their consent. And if you share any use cases during this user group, please don't share any of that without their consent as well, because there could be some confidential information. Warren, why don't you talk a little bit more about our actual goals as the European user group?
Yeah, so we set up the European Virtual Marketer User Group, and we wanted to, it's always going to be virtual, so it's going to be that virtual safe space to learn for people that can't get as easily to the local user groups. So a safe space to learn and collaborate as well. So they're usually going to be around 1 hour, and at least the initial frequency that we did discuss was once a quarter, or more if we can manage it, but we're going to really alternate between some of the more strategic discussions, technical demos, and work groups. And we want to make the user groups kind of less intimidating, especially to newer users as well. We really want to create that support model and kind of lift as we climb. There is also a couple of regional marketer user groups coming up. So given the current situation, they're virtual at the moment, but we have on the 18th of June, the London one, and they've got a great agenda, by the way. So if you can make that one, that's going to be a great shout. And for those of you who speak German, the Munich one is coming up on the 9th of July as well. So I'm super excited to introduce our guest panelist today, Heather McMoses, who's the VP of Marketing for Nexthink. So I obviously don't know her as well as Chloe does, but from the initial conversations, it's hugely exciting to see someone who's very senior in their marketing career support marketing operations and see the value of Marketo. She's based in Switzerland now, previously from Boston. So I'll introduce you to Heather. So over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Warren. And first, I just want to say thank you to both you and Chloe for having me here today. And I'm very excited to be here. I can't believe it's the first European user group. So very, very excited. So thank you.
Thanks for being with us. All right, well, let's dive straight into some of our panel discussions. So Heather, tell us a little bit more about you. How long have you used Marketo, and what feature would you like to see added into the platform?
Great questions. And I didn't look it up beforehand. So if anyone knows when Marketo as a company was founded, that's probably about the time that I started using it. So for quite a long time, I would guess maybe 12 years or so. I've been using it. And again, I'm not in there day to day, but I was in the past, and I think it's a great tool. And I think, you know, for me, I see the value of this, and what I would love to get more of from Marketo is taking what is available in it and being able to share it across the rest of the organization. So that, you know, is everything from reporting to shareable calendars, you know, things to help communicate all the great stuff marketing is doing to executive teams and to sales, for example.
I remember this was a couple summits ago, and someone who has maybe attended a summit more frequently than I have can maybe confirm. Weren't they talking about adding like a CMO dashboard to the Marketo Sky interface so that we could do exactly what Heather's looking for, like creating a dashboard of visibility for those stats and the figures that a CMO would need rather than like a marketing manager? I don't know if anyone has any input on that, or if they know better than we do.
They're doing lots of things with Sky, so I'm sure that something like that is coming, but we'll see.
I think I remember hearing something about that when Sky was first announced. I think there was at Summit 2018, I think it was, and I think that was part of the conversation. Excuse me, with with a performance insights, if I remember correctly, and a couple of other different announcements that had kind of happened around mergers where they were buying more tools that help with analytics, and that was one of the pieces. I don't know what's happened with it frequently since then now.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. We'll have to look into that a little bit further. That would be great.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into a little bit more about the whole marketing and IT relationship. So what are the challenges, Heather, do you think exist today about IT and marketing organizations working hand in hand?
Yeah, so it's, I know we had some great conversations, Chloe and Warren, about this exact topic when we were preparing for this. And I think, you know, the way that it really is today is marketing and IT executives they're not really speaking the same language. So they have different goals, they have different roadmaps. So for example, with marketing, you're really focused on bringing in the latest and greatest new technology to try to help bring in new business to the company. And from an IT perspective, you're really focused on security, governance, enterprise architecture. And so there's like this natural, you know, I would say that a natural tension exists between those two things. One other thing I think is important to note is, you know, those are the things they're focused on, but from a marketing perspective, you want this new technology so that you can bring your customers and your prospects along in the journey and really provide them with the best experience possible. Where in IT, they're very focused on efficiency, scale at a reduced cost. So you automatically have this challenge between the two departments up front. I think, you know, one good point around this that we are definitely seeing not only at Nexthink, but with our customers as well too, is that IT is becoming less of a gatekeeper than they have been in the past. And they're really becoming more strategic, where they're needing to work with other departments within an organization to basically partner with them to help achieve business outcomes. And I find over the past couple of years, it's been much nicer and much easier to work with IT because they're beginning to understand a bit about, you know, the services they're providing to their customers.
Mm-hmm. Warren, do you have anything you want to add to that? You're on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away when Heather initially talked on around that kind of supporting marketing operations there, and I know that we've got some kind of questions later on, which you'll speak on, Heather, is around kind of some of the things that you did to sort of bridge those gaps and build those relationships. And people on this call, like, you're going to find that in your career, you're going to come up against those challenges, maybe not immediately, but you'll start to see over time as you start to develop and play around with your instance. So it's really interesting to hear on that.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Decided to unshare my screen during the question so we can see everyone better. All right. Next question. People often talk this sales and marketing relationship. We all know it. We could talk about it for days. But is there anything to consider from that sales and marketing relationship to develop kind of a new normal for this IT and marketing relationship?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because it gets into sort of the interrelationships between teams within companies. And, you know, the one that's probably the most famous is the sales and marketing relationship. And at times it can be contentious. And the same can be said for an IT marketing relationship as well. It has the opportunity to be contentious. And whenever you have two teams or two departments that, you know, are not aligned in what the goals are that they're trying to achieve, there's this natural tension that exists. And, you know, I think marketing is obviously very heavily reliant on sales to sell. And they're also really heavily reliant on IT to make sure that they're able to get the tools for them to be able to prospect to their customers as well too. And again, I think that disconnect is something that is happening. As I was looking into this user group, I read a stat and just looking at sales and IT relationships, and basically they said 78% of IT people think they work collaboratively with marketing, but only 58% of marketers agree. So there's obviously this relationship issue, and, you know, I think there's an opportunity to try to improve it.
That's interesting. Is there anyone out there The question, I guess, for the attendees with us, is there anyone out there who has like a unique experience to share about working with their IT departments, or maybe that they haven't worked with them? What do you guys see on this topic? I'm more than happy to pick on someone.
Yeah, or me.
I'll pick on you, Warren.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I was actually going to call out Molly, who's on the call, to be honest with you, because I know that she's doing some fantastic work at the moment in terms of, there's a tool called Data Grail that's coming, and she's fantastic. I'm blown away by just the things that she's doing, the conversations she's having to really push the whole organization as a whole. So she's on the call, and I'm going to pick on you, Molly, to talk about like some of the challenges that you kind of faced there and how you dealt with them, because you're really like strong-armed, you're championing the tool. So it was fantastic to see you do that.
Thanks, Warren. I was getting the courage to bring it up. So thanks for calling me out. It has absolutely been a labor of love. So sorry, I should introduce myself quickly. I'm Molly. I work at ForgeRock. I've been there for almost 8 years. We're an identity and access management company. I've been in Marketo since 2014. And I am from Bristol. Sorry, I live in Bristol, but clearly I'm not from here. So it's quite fun to see some other Americans abroad in this group and on the call. And Warren's working with me right now as a contractor at ForgeRock. So it was around November that we had some privacy complaints come in, and I was Data Grail, kind of like I was Marketo before we had Marketo, routing leads to salespeople. And so clearly this was not going to scale. And for a privacy compliance company, then, I mean, for privacy company, compliance is not even a question, right? It's not about just the monetary damage, reputational damage that we weren't going to be able to get back. So I heard about this tool from another consultant that I worked with, and I looked at a few other ones. OneTrust, TrustArc, I think was the other one, but Data Grail just blew me away because they took it to the next level, right? They are a privacy management platform, but it's all built on workflows and connectors instead of like kind of your legacy spreadsheet type deal. So I have been pushing for it at my company since November of 2019, and we just closed it at the end of April, which may not seem like that long, but I've seen us get other tools in such a shorter amount of time. And to me, like fighting the good fight, like, you know, we'll pay $50,000 for an event tool that we might use once that year versus Data Grail was a reasonably cost tool, you know, that will give us not only the peace of mind, the automation, we all love automation here, of DSRs. And then also just, we're a private company, right? So it also just checked that box for us saying, okay, we've done our due diligence when it comes to privacy. I went up against a lot of fights. It was more with our InfoSec team, but I think that can kind of relate into the IT piece of this in terms of the security of it, right? The fact that we are giving this tool access to all of our PII throughout all the different departments. And so the departments we looked at were marketing, university, backstage, which is like our software download, and then also HR. I won the fight, we got the tool, but I'm still fighting because right now they're only letting me do it for marketing. And so I'm just taking this as a great opportunity to show how well this tool is going to work for marketing. And fair enough, we are, I would say, not if the number one, you know, up there, people that hold PII, right? So I could talk about this for hours. I don't want to waste all of our time on it, but
it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Molly.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to move on, just being conscious of time. Let's talk about ownership a little bit. I know it can be like a gray zone and a sensitive topic, but marketing is increasingly powered by technology. And in every organization that I've seen, or the people, other marketing operations people I've spoken to, their day-to-day is centered around technology. Heather, and there's no wrong answer, there's no right answer, but in your point of view, who effectively kind of owns this decision when it comes to adding to your tech stack?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, it's definitely blurry for sure these days. My feeling is that I brought Marketo into 4 different companies and, tried to partner with IT in various ways. I think the best way to have a partnership with IT is to, not view them as somebody who is just responsible for delivery, because they effectively also own IT infrastructure within the company, and you have to be sensitive to what their needs are while still trying to meet your own. So to me, it's very much a joint ownership. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. I think the more often that you can get IT in upfront, the things will flow much more smoothly. And also, if you've got a great relationship with them, they're always going to be willing to help you when you're having issues.
Mm-hmm. Warren, I have a question for you actually. As a consultant, if you're helping companies on the consulting and agency side, what's your thought on that? Is it up to you, the consultant, to develop that relationship with the IT department, or do you expect the in-house marketing team to already have that relationship built?
It's an interesting question. What you never see the relationship as built as obviously you'd want it. But one of the things I would say is remembering that IT guys are humans as well. So, like, for example, like supporting FordRock at the moment, I work with a web guy. And yes, he's in IT, but initially there was some resistance because he's fairly low resourced, and there's similar alignments there with just working for a department. It's just for me, it's remembering that they're actually human and start to build that human interaction with them, and just have conversations with them that you normally would, and that naturally develops into work conversations anyway. So that's the way that I kind of approach it, especially if that alignment isn't already there. It's worth remembering, like, just the human interaction and the human side of it to building those relationships.
Mm-hmm. I actually just started watching the IT Crowd. I can't believe I only just discovered this show last week, but it's hilarious. Makes me think that they are real people. They might have their own ways of doing things, but they're very real people. All right, I actually skipped a slide too fast. Heather, so what about some tips for marketers out there who want to start having this conversation with their IT department? Where should they start?
Yeah, I think, well, exactly what Warren just said too. I think the empathy component is huge. You really need to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish and understand what they're going through and what they're thinking, and try to get them to understand what you are as well too, to make sure that you can actually align on things. So I think that's probably the first most important thing. I also think it's important to align on the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, because sometimes IT, their focus is how do I make things really efficient, and marketing, the efficient solution may not be the one that provides the best experience to customers. So you have to have, a meeting of the minds around that. And actually what I'm seeing some of my marketing peers do now is they're creating these joint roadmaps with IT. So it's like they're sitting down in the early planning phase to say, okay, these are the things that I want to accomplish, and getting IT's input up front. So I think that helps quite a bit. And they also can understand too what IT's roadmap is and what they're planning. So I think that's a key thing to do. Also, I guess this goes for any relationship. You should over communicate. It's a key to every good relationship. We found that anytime you have issues around budget or resources, if you're able to communicate better up front, it's going to be a much better relationship overall. So I'd say those are the top things from my perspective that you should really focus on.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to that before we pass on? Warren, any thoughts?
Yeah, or even any questions for Heather, if anyone's got any questions.
Definitely interested if there are other tips out there to try to help improve the relationship. It's one of the most important ones besides the ones with sales and our customers and prospects, for sure.
It's a struggle, that's for sure. I mean, you really have to figure out going on that over communicating part. I mean, it's not only just over communicating, but it's just how to communicate. I mean, the world that we're in today finds us that we're all remote all the time, everywhere. And so trying to, is it by email? Is it by video? Is it, I mean, is it a Slack group? I mean, and that's a valid question for any type of relationship and any organization, not just the interdepartmental or, but even just within our marketing teams today, is finding those best ways to communicate with people so that it's not a one-way street. It's really got to be a two-way, not talking at them. Yeah, Michael, what do you think?
All right, so comment and a question, I guess, and I think that where I've seen kind of the intersection and some of that, I don't know if I would call it a struggle, but basically has been around security, around the domain name especially. I think we see a lot of that, and a lot of conversations where IT is notably guarded about what happens with the domain name, especially the clients that I've had that are software as a service companies. That is their bread and butter in a lot of different ways. So they're right to be very guarded about that information and how that kind of interacts with what we're doing on the digital marketing side of things too. So I've been in a number of situations where there's been some hesitancy until you start that discussion and say, hey, we also care about domain name reputation because it has a direct impact on deliverability for email marketing. And I really vividly recall being in a conversation about SPF records with an IT manager, and I didn't understand why there was that until we actually got on the phone with him and actually just said, hey, listen, I've got all of these different records that are set up because our software platform, it has to be configured with a domain name this way for it to be able to work properly. And that made a lot of sense then. It didn't seem like it was so confrontational or adversarial. I think that my question kind of comes from that is about, having that person as a liaison, and myself, the marketing department really did not want to dive into the technical side of things for fear of kind of going too deep into the weeds, and not being able to speak to that point. And I think that was kind of where, as a consultant, we were kind of able to kind of bridge the gap a little bit. But for the people that are internal and on the client side, how do you structure that relationship? Do you delegate a liaison person on your marketing team specifically to talk to IT? Does it always fall to the person who is at the top of the marketing org chart? Or do you seek kind of an outside third party to sort of mediate or arbitrate, if you will, those relationships? Are they like that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, and it's definitely changed over the past, 5 to 7 years, I would say, where, originally it was probably, that you would see the head of marketing being responsible and managing those relationships. Now it's absolutely the head of marketing operations who is the one who's coming up and saying, okay, these are all the tools that we need to use. This is the budget that we need. And this person is the trusted advisor to the head of marketing. So they have that relationship, and I can't stress enough how important it is. And going back to what Chloe said, it's about making sure you're communicating in the right channels, because I've definitely seen exactly what you've seen around SPF concerns and okay, well, what are they doing? We're concerned about security, and I need to get this live. And the simple act of just picking up a telephone occasionally really helps quite a bit.
I think as well is I think it applies for anything with marketing operations, right? So they're quite often undervalued in what they do and what they provide. And it's kind of the job of marketing operations to go, I feel, to go that extra mile to reach out, because there's lots of things that we can do that people don't realize, which is, is particularly in EMEA, right? Where it's kind of like in Americas, it's more fully developed in terms of an actual career path. Whereas in EMEA, it's like they really don't know what we can do. So I do think it's reaching out to go, hey, have you thought about this? So having those creative technical ideas to help support some of the IT goals as well, or even in other departments. So it is actually just a wider thing, I think, of just remembering that, what do people think of marketing operations? You are a marketing operations person, and going that extra mile to help and support there, and you're going to get that feedback and in dividends, and as you kind of go through your career.
I think there was
absolutely.
Something interesting that Michael said, and it kind of triggered me as well. I think there's a big value as well of being seen by IT as not just a marketing person, but someone that's more on the tech side, and having, like when you were talking about SPF, going, okay, we can talk the same language as you, and kind of build some credibility that way to help the relationship.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
And I think, technology, it is the foundation of marketing. It's now the foundation of every business in the current environment that we're living in, but you have to really be able to understand to a certain level. I mean, not every single technical detail, but enough to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's how you build respect and trust.
For sure. Builds that credibility in that relationship then. And I think the other point, Mark, you asked about was you're saying sometimes from client side with the internally. So in my case, I work with a lot of either developers or data people or whoever it may be. But sometimes we have pulled in a third party. My boss says, do we need to pull them in just to give that extra level of credibility? And just, even if it's just to facilitate the conversation and kind of have a second voice of what we're talking, because we have a lot of either internal built systems and products. So then this concept of third party Marketo is a bit strange to a lot of people. So having a more independent consultant come in going, this is how we can do it, has helped us a little bit as well, just get through those conversations and get the buy-in from the team that we need.
Exactly. And I think it's sometimes nice to have that independent third party validation. It diffuses some of the conversations. And also it's a trusted source of someone who has that experience that they can bring to the table to kind of help support marketing. I think it's a great thing to do as needed.
I think a lot.
Oh, sorry, Michael.
I think a lot of times with that Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book, where that first habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I remember being in a different conversation, different group, and the VP of marketing says, "Yeah, we could use you guys in on this. We could use all the ammunition we could get." And I'm thinking, I think that's the wrong approach. If we're at that stage in the relationship right now, then we've got bigger problems, right? And so being able to speak that technical knowledge to avoid getting to that spot is a good spot for all of us to be on the same page.
Right. And something too that Warren said early on, it's about building that human relationship, I think too, because oftentimes in marketing, you're calling up IT or you're getting in touch with them only when you have a problem and there's some disaster, knock on wood, potential. And if you are able to get them in earlier on conversations or get their opinions, you're going to build a much nicer relationship where you don't have to have ammunition, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I want to give an example of that, if that's okay. So recently we've increased our GoToWebinar licenses because obviously, and I've had to get them for different regions. And so I've been in contact with IT a lot, which has been different than any of the times I mostly contact IT, like you say, in like an emergency situation. This was just explaining to them the need, and obviously we're looking at budget. And so I've had to actually pick up the phone a lot and talk to them, which I think has helped build the rapport with the VP of IT here. And we're looking to potentially move from our online meeting tool that we use to another one. And he asked me in the midst of a conversation if I wanted to be part of the stakeholder group with InfoSec to decide which tool we're going to use. And I thought, okay, that's a huge win, because I was able to explain to him how important it is that we run, we use BrightTalk and other things, but we run a lot of our webinars, private closed shop ones, through GoToWebinar. And if we're looking to get rid of LogMeIn, I didn't think he understood until I explained it to him how big of impact that was going to have on marketing ops.
Right.
And so really explaining that a whole company decision has to include the people that use the tools.
Exactly. Especially when you have integrations into those systems too, and you have to, unplug and replug everything. It can get crazy. So that's a good story.
Something that came to mind a couple of minutes ago, and actually I was on a webinar earlier today that talked about how we would define our job, our marketing job today, to like the Queen of England or to your grandmother. And I typically answer that question saying, I work in I'm purely marketing operations. I do some campaign operations. But when I explain my job to my grandfather, I tell him that I'm essentially IT support for the marketing team. So it's just an interesting point I wanted to bring up, that I'm actually using IT as the definition of what I do for my job today. So that's just goes hand in hand to explain how tight-knit of a relationship that, if we don't already have it, that we need to have with the IT department, because marketing operations is a foothold in both IT and in marketing. You've got the best of both worlds, kind of.
I love that, Chloe. Thank you. It's always hard for me to explain what I do.
It's the IT support for marketing. That's what I do.
Interesting way of looking at it. And I think I don't know if it's the scale has tipped yet, but it's pretty close on who spends more money on technology, marketing versus IT. So it's, pretty soon you can see, the fusion and this blurriness becoming even more prevalent.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm actually going to, can I share my screen again? I want to turn it over to our audience again. So I want to thank Heather, first of all, for being with us. I know that you might need to jump on your next call, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll make sure that we can get them to Heather, and then I'll send them back out to you guys. Thanks so much, Heather.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a great conversation. And if you do have questions, feel free to send them. And I appreciate the great conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you. But so now I want to take the time to actually turn it over to everyone who's attending. So Warren and I were excited to get this up and running. But besides us just introducing ourselves and telling you where we're from and where we work, we want to know a little bit more about you guys. So I'm going to pick on Michael because I've gotten to know him a lot the past couple of weeks. Michael, here, am I sharing my screen now? Yeah, four simple questions. Who you are, what country are you from, and where country are you working in? Sometimes it may not be the same. Where do you consider yourself in the Marketo scale of users? And what's your favorite Marketo feature? And I'm hoping we have time to get around to everyone.
Okay, I'll try and be brief for that case. So I'm Michael Tucker. I'm a marketing technology consultant with a conversion store. So run my own consultancy, and we work on making Marketo simple for companies to be able to use. A country where I'm from, originally I'm from St. Pete, Florida, USA. Currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina with, by way of Canada. I was in Canada for probably about 20 years or so, and I'm a dual citizen. So does that make me an honorary EU member with the Commonwealth or what have you? Maybe. Marketo, I've been in Marketo for about 5 or 6 years now. So I'd say that we're pretty advanced. Favorite Marketo feature, I really enjoy dynamic content and then being able to combine that with snippets and engagement programs. I think you can do a lot of neat things by combining the three of those things.
Very fun. Thanks. Warren, do you want to answer that question?
I mean, I can go for it. I'll try and be brief as well, right? So, I've done my intro, so that's all good. I'm based in the UK. Do I consider myself an advanced user? I guess so. Everyone, I guess, wants to aim for that. There's more that I can learn and have been learning, so there's that. So I'd say I was an advanced user. Favorite Marketo feature. Now, I've always liked the way that it neatly put it in the same, like Marketo Classic, in a neat, consistent list. So I can do all my creative stuff and my drawings and my planning. And I know that when I come back to Marketo, I can set up my campaigns in a consistent way and it feels familiar. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one, but that for me is really what I like. And I know that I can do everything I need to as well. It's not like Pott where you sort of just go in and it's just like, oh, well, if I had Marketo, I could actually just do it. It's like, so I really enjoy that. I know that it just works. I know that it works in a consistent fashion.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Who's next?
So should we call out down the list? Because I'm looking at like Adele, for example, that just snuck in last minute, even though we did your London Marketo user group plug.
Hello, yes, I'm sorry for being late. I got stuck on a call. So I'm Adele Miller. Hello, everyone. I'm from the UK and I work in the UK, quite unoriginal, unfortunately. I've been in the Marketo world for coming up to 9 years now, so maybe on the advanced scale of things. And my favorite feature is actually RTP, which is known as web personalization now. So we're using it more and more now at IFS, and it's just a really quick way to get some great personalization up on your website. You don't need a lot of coding expertise, you don't need a lot of data management. You can just make a real personalized experience without too much work. So that's my favorite one.
Thank you for sharing. All right, we're gonna go down the list. Frank.
I was trying to find a mute button. Well, I found it. My name is Frank Geldof. I actually am working in Sweden, but I'm originally from the Netherlands. I work for Ericsson, and I am working there as a CRM and demand operations manager, which is a big title, but in basic terms, I help run Marketo within Ericsson worldwide. I would consider myself an advanced user, and my favorite Marketo feature. Good question. I actually do not know what my favorite feature is. I would probably say then easiest way is probably Smart List. The versatility, the things that you can do with it, the ability to export, the views that you have, they are usually my first to go to get some insights.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing. All right, Helene.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Let's get the video going. Yay! Hey guys, well, my name is Helene. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I work and live as a digital nomad. So right now I'm in Portugal and I like it here. So I'm planning to stay for a while. I'm a freelance contractor and I've been working with Marketo for 8 years, maybe 9 already. So I would consider myself an advanced user as well. And my favorite feature, I think, is archiving. I'm a super neat freak, so I love to archive things. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks for sharing. All right, John, how about you?
Hi, I'm John. Yeah, I work with Booking.com and look after one of the Marketo instances, a lot of data, a lot of other systems that connect to Marketo. It's kind of my role here. From Australia, but in the Netherlands, unlike the other last two. Everyone's moving away from Netherlands. Seems like I came here. I think I'd like to consider myself getting up to quite the advanced area of the user, but I think that you talk to many different people in different use cases, there's still so much that you hear about that you don't even get close to touching in my day-to-day. So I think there's still a lot to learn. And the favorite feature one's super hard, but I was thinking just like the default program I quite like, just in the way that you contain your audience and you contain all your assets and everything in one, rather than other systems where your audience is kind of living somewhere else and you've got to connect everything, and it's all just nicely self-contained in a little program campaign.
I like that. That's a good one. Thanks.
All right, they say, oh, it's a universal audience that you can use, and you have to like, ooh, it gets messy. So,
all right, Kimberly, let's hear from you.
I'm Kimberly, and I am from the United States, and I work in the United States. I'm originally from Chicago, but now I live in Raleigh, where it snows less. I would argue that I'm a newbie still at Marketo because of the amount of mistakes I still make every day. I don't think I qualify for intermediate or advanced. I've only been using Marketo for 2 years, so there's still a lot for me to learn. And my favorite Marketo feature is going to be a UI feature where the smart campaign light bulb flashes red when you've messed something up, because I need more stuff that like flashes at you and tells you you've done something dumb. That's my favorite feature.
I love that. All right, thanks for sharing. Who's next on the list? Molly.
Hello, I think I already gave an intro, but
yeah,
if some people came a little bit later, just quickly, I am based in the UK. I'm from the US, Portland, Oregon, and I've been in Bristol for about 5 years now, and will be here for a foreseeable future. I would consider myself an advanced user. I've been in Marketo 6 years. I find a hard time saying it, a little bit of an imposter syndrome, because I learn new stuff every day. Been working with Warren since January, and he teaches me stuff all the time. So I think even if you do consider yourself advanced, there's levels to, can you put a few layers in that? My favorite Marketo feature, I'm gonna have to say request campaign. Simple, but you can get really fancy with it.
That's a good one. That's really good. There's no wrong answer. I mean, these are all good ones. All right, thanks for sharing. Nathan.
Yes, hi. I'm Nathan. I'm born in Canada and then raised in France, and now living in Switzerland I'm working for Nexthink there. I'm the community manager for Nexthink. So I've started using Marketo really recently, a few months ago, partly because of Chloe. So thanks, Chloe. And so yeah, I'm really a newbie here, but I would say I'm using a lot Marketo for building some campaigns. We are organizing a lot of events for our community, some user group, this kind of stuff. So I'm really impressed by how smooth it is, the integration with the Salesforce, as our community is on Salesforce too. Having all tied together is really helpful for us.
Thanks for sharing. I only answered 2 questions, so I will go down the list as well. So
I'm going to pick on you.
Sorry? Oh,
I was going to pick on you otherwise.
Oh no, I'll volunteer. So I'm an American based in the south of France. I'm originally from Chicago. Do I consider myself a Marketo newbie, intermediate? So technically I am certified, but I would actually consider myself more an intermediate user because there is so much, like anything about velocity script, APIs, request campaign, like these are things that I would just love to know about, and I just don't know how to use them. So I would consider myself an advanced intermediate user. Like the scale of intermediate. My favorite feature, it changes a lot, but right now I'm playing a lot in the Marketo Sky, in the new UX. And my favorite feature right now is that mass select in your assets and how you can mass approve emails or like mass delete things. I've been wanting that feature for many, many years, and it's finally there. But ask me next week and my favorite feature will probably be different.
It's nice until you want to do things like mass move things.
Yeah.
And then you're like, it can't. I'm like, oh, it's so close.
Yeah. Let's see. Did I miss anyone on the list? Did everyone go?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is everyone on the call.
Let's see. We've got 10 minutes left. Is there anyone, any challenges that you're facing? Anything you want to? I mean, it's a user group. So how are you guys using Marketo, or
any roadblocks or anything like that, or anything that you want to ask on the call, or anything like that we can possibly help with?
Now I have a question that it's not really a problem, but I'm wondering what everyone's background is, because when I started using Marketo, it was mostly marketers that acquainted themselves with Marketo. And now I see that more people are coming from a tech background and not a marketing background, who are marketing operations managers. So if we have time, I would love to know if you came in from like the marketing door or the technology door.
We could do it by raise of hand because we have video.
Yeah.
So raise your hand if you came in through the marketing door and you find yourself using Marketo.
Video on?
Yeah. So what's the other ways we can't see you?
Yeah, that's a lot of everyone.
So almost everyone. So Michael, you're the only one who hasn't raised your hand. Where's your background?
My background came in more actually on the sales side of things initially, and I had marketing as my education. So my education was in marketing and management information systems. So I always knew I wanted to be involved in technology, but more for the sake of actually using technology to help people. I didn't want to be deep into code, even though I've wound up picking up a lot of that in about 5 different languages and at different levels. But my marketing side, the way that Marketo came into place, and well, automation in general, actually, the first one was Pardot. I was having a meeting with my sales manager or sales director, kind of going through my pipeline of deals, and he said, let me show you this report that we generated in Pardot about all of your leads ranked by their score, by their behavioral score. And you know, the 5th on the list was a deal that I hadn't talked to them in about 2 or 3 weeks, which was an offshore oil company in South Africa. Wound up closing that because of that scoring information, and my commission off of that paid off my student loans for my undergrad. And I just thought, I got to get into this. So that's what I did. But I think that, you know, obviously, like, you have a lot more respect for sales, having been in the trenches trying to close deals, and then understanding the insights that are coming in off of Marketo or whatever your marketing automation platform is, when you've actually been the person kind of, you know, responsible to get this deal closed by the end of the month with the data that's coming in there. So lots of value there, lots of appreciation for the platform and the people that work in it, no matter what your background is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting though as well, right? So the more, certainly just speaking for me, like the more that I get into operations, the more that I miss just like having a look at copy and playing around with some images and, you know, testing all that stuff. Like I miss like the marketing side, and you find yourself like really heavy into Marketo and like admin permissions. Sometimes I feel that a little bit odd compared to what I really like wanted to do, but I still love it. I love like the empowering people and seeing people like Molly on the call, who's fantastic. The instance is really nicely set up. It's correctly labeled, does a great job. So it's really nice to work with people like that, actually, which is again get the biggest buzz. I don't know about anyone else, whether they actually miss the marketing side of it.
Yeah, I miss the marketing side of it for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that really. I think so. I actually started out in inside sales, and then moved over to marketing campaigns manager, which was really the marketing side of it. I was just brand new in Marketo and, you know, did webinars and event follow-ups, that kind of thing. It's only been the last like 3 years that I would consider myself operations. So yeah, and not like Chloe, you said, like, I'm gonna tell everyone now when I can explain to people not in the industry, it's IT for marketing. Like, it's totally different than like what you just explained, more like the marketing side of it.
Yeah, maybe I always explain it badly then, because I always say to my grandma, like, hey, you know, when you buy something on Amazon, you get an email, there's something happens there that tells it that's you. So that's I'm in that little in between space. That's what I say.
The guy behind Jeff Bezos, did I hear this right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds
My
like.
husband actually just tells everyone that I send emails for a living, and my sister tells everyone it's like Chandler Bing. You know, Chandler Bing from Friends, no one knew what his job was. And it's like, oh, your job's such a Chandler Bing. She does something with the computer, and that's it.
So Barney Stinson, right, on How I Met Your Mother. Oh, please. That was his
Yeah.
job.
All
Is there I was going to say, is there any other questions or challenges, like people, any actual specific challenges like people are finding in Marketo that we can answer at all? Or
I want to ask a question about this. Do you guys mind
Of
if I
course.
ask?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am, you know, finding we're doing more like Marketo with social media work, Marketo ad bridge, Marketo, you know, matched audiences, custom audiences, and I wondered, you know, I was looking at the local asset creator the other day, and I realized, boy, when's the last time I've created a sweepstakes or a poll or some of the other social media local assets that are on there? And I think my recollection was that some of those have been depreciated on some of the different social media platforms. And I was just wondering you know, when's the last time you've used some of those features on the platform, and you know, are they all still accessible on with some of the changes that are happening in terms of security on some of the social media platforms, and whether that's changed over the years?
I think a similar one was when I de-approved a landing page yesterday, and it says, you know, it's going to get rid of the page on Facebook that you used to be able to have just like this custom. Did they still even do that? I don't know.
no.
That alert came up, and I was like, oh yeah, not bad.
So just on the Facebook side, they really locked down the permissions on that. I was doing integrations with Facebook like a couple of years ago, like before like scandal, because I used to run a little social media business for franchisees, because it was like a lift and shift approach. And like I know Facebook has locked down all of its permissions and everything and its APIs, so a lot of the Facebook stuff won't work anymore. But I've used things like with the newer features, like the LinkedIn form fill integration works really nicely. It's really seamless. And the matched audiences, they could still go a long way to make that a little better, because that is still a manual thing where you have to send to LinkedIn. And I know there's been discussion on the marketing ops groups about clever ways to send over that list automatically, and all of them are tagging in Sanford to try and answer like that specific question. So I wonder, like, if that develops, then I think it'd be quite nice. But I guess if people are using it, I don't know if many people are using Marketo now for B2C because of how their sales relationship works with Adobe. Like, we had a conversation, like, I guess like before I started supporting things like ForgeRock, and they had this weird handoff to say, actually, if you're B2C, you might want to look more in the Adobe, and whereas actually the B2B, you might want to look at Marketo. So yeah, so I don't think they will be supporting it, but from what I've seen on the Facebook side, some of those features don't work anymore.
I'm sure they mentioned one time, like 2 summits ago, that they were going to make that ad bridge push oriented so you could schedule it. But
We still haven't, which is annoying because it's super useful.
Yeah.
I think 2 summits ago, I remember them saying something about, well, actually this predictive audience feature that just came out last week, the way that was explained was it was like lookalike audiences in Facebook, right? But only within your database. So I definitely see there's some crossover there. And I think this kind of ties into our IT conversation altogether, that as some of these different guiding principles, marketing automation, domain security with the IT departments, and then the interconnectivity with our increasingly, socially, digital social media presence. I think as all of those 3 things start to converge on each other, you're going to start to see kind of overlap where the need for being able to share between those different platforms is going to become more and more important.
Hey, I was going to ask as well, Kim, because you were on the beta testing for the predictive audience stuff, have you played around with the feature? Yeah, have you got any insight into the predictive audience feature?
Yeah, so we ended up using it for like 6 months. I've been using it now, and we were able to send to 80% of the audience, or sorry, no, 73% of our audience size, like decrease by 73% and still get 80% of our registration goal. So it works really well. We were sending a gross amount of emails just to get a certain number of webinar registrations, because our audiences are a little bit weird because we have very different people depending on what product they're looking into. So depending on what the webinar was about, we definitely had to find a different audience. So using that lookalike filter, actually searching your database for people with like features really helped us out. So I was able to send to a much smaller size and not exhaust our audience, and it's actually been working really well for us.
That's cool. No, I was interested to hear about that. Now I'm looking forward to playing around with that and just testing. I've been trying to use Marketo Sky just for general stuff, just because I know that I don't want to get like, oh no, like how do I use this? Just be like back to like a basic user, like, oh, I don't know. But yeah,
I think they're going to end up doing a soft rollout.
Yeah,
So
I hope so.
it's do a mass migration. The way
I think they said they're going to switch out. You'll have a toggle so you can choose. So
because I toggle between the 2, not every day, but a couple times a week. I mean, when I want to mass do something at once with multiple assets, I toggle to Sky and I do it in there. The other thing I really like in Sky is you can actually save smart list rules. So you don't have to recreate smart lists a billion times if you're using the same smart list in multiple programs. So I started creating smart lists that we use across multiple programs in Sky, and then I'll reference them in another, I'll go back to Classic and I'll reference them there. So it's been helpful for specific things for me.
So there's a couple of actually really good features that I've found. So like the mass unapproval of assets and approval, which is great. There's a feature that you can request Marketo to add on, which is putting an event, a registration form cap. So you can then say 1,500 registrants, then I'm going to redirect it to another page, which is another good one.
But I think that's limited only if you're using Marketo landing pages.
Yeah, I believe so. That's a good point. And there is also the expiry of assets as well. So like for landing pages after events, if you use them for like one-offs, you can then set the expiry for that. So I found those features to be quite interesting anyway.
You can also expire triggers, I think. You can have a trigger and set an end date, so it'll always be on until that date.
I think so.
Yeah.
Or you could just leave it, and in 6 months, when it doesn't have any activity, it'll just expire.
Yeah. So context, we use Splash for our virtual events. So that's Splash into Blue Jeans, and it all connects through. But we have sometimes 300 events a month, and if we're trying to migrate all of the Marketo to send everything, so it kind of needs to be triggered off the status changes that come from Splash across. So then we're going to have 3 triggers per 300 programs a month. Generate like this is so I'm wanting them to put that on their API as well. So I think at this moment it's only annually you have to set it per campaign, but if it can then waiting for the day they can go, okay, date is this date plus 3 days, turn the triggers off. I'm like, it'd be a savior. But now I just have the APIs with the do it myself. But
I wonder if you can play around with that using the because you can set tokenized like dates, like with program level tokens, you can set a day after the event goes live or something.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can then play around with that to then set an expiry, or what you can do there with the expiry and like manipulate it in a couple of different ways. I'm going to try and play around with that and see if I can break it, which would be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if it's working.
I wonder on that if you could set up real-time personalization rules to automatically hide your form for whatever that event is after a specific period of time, and do it off of the RTP module.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the time as well. Do we have any kind of final questions or anything like that?
I had one question if we had time.
Yeah,
I was just curious. Warren brought it up about the new feature. I was just curious if anyone also looked at the program custom fields that came.
I haven't.
I had a quick look at it in the test environment in the sandbox. But
Yeah,
I think that one of the things I don't like, there's only, I checked it with Marketo support, but they're rechecking it, that there's only a maximum of 20 custom fields you can use over your whole instance.
Yeah, so this was my learning too, because you have it in them in admin in the database section, which I was a little bit surprised by. So they're global, but then content of that field is local to the program.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can't see them. You can't use them in that perspective. You will see them in the specific section of the membership status, where you can see the column. But it's quite limited, and I was actually quite happy when I read it. I'm like, oh, that's great, because then we can actually have event pages with custom forms and custom fields. But if there's only 20 you can use, it needs to be very specific which 20 you want to use in your whole instance.
Yeah, and I think the way they marketed it was like the chicken or fish choosing option for an event. But then you were never going to put like, I don't think it makes sense to me. It says meal preference, for example. So what I've done, I've created, I think 5 at the moment. I created 4 that was, I called them local fields, just to keep with the local token naming kind of thing. And then I picked the field type. So it's like a text, and I created one that's a Boolean. And then, so it's, I've got like a team of 6 or so people that actually make all the campaigns and programs on a day-to-day basis. So I think that my idea was that I was just going to call them local field text, local field 2 text, local field 3 text, local field 4 Boolean. And then kind of in the program notes, local field 1 is whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does that 20 field limit differ by if you have workspaces? Is it by by the whole instance?
What I understood but it's going to be checked, but what I understood, it's 20 for the whole instance and not per workspace.
Okay.
So it's a custom object, and it was a maximum of 20 fields. That's what they said, but.
Yeah, so it just surprised me that because I think just the way they're marketing the fish or the chicken option, and then when you have to configure them admin for the whole instance rather than program, I was like, okay, that's slightly different to what I was expecting. It's still great, because we had these 2 throwaways that would, as I said, the 6 people, and then I would just have to check, are you using the person notes one? Are you using this? Can I use this one now? Who's made? So this saves a lot of drama there, but I was just curious if someone else had a way of using it that I hadn't thought about.
I guess the use case for that is going to be like just event kind of questions, right? That you can just like you said, kind of the throwaway ones. So like we had a form, like I don't know, like a year or so ago, I was using it for a form, and they wanted to know sizes for like t-shirts and stuff like that, because it was more likely to see. That would be an example where I'd use it there. But that 20 field limit is a stinger really. But hey,
I've got something now where there's a special use case that's sort of a webinar, and there's a form that I need them to fill in to kind of agree to the content of the webinar. Is for a training sort of thing, to say, yeah, follow this. So I've used the Boolean field there too, because I don't want to create a Marketo field to capture that. So it's just kind of for that program to say, okay, now these are the ones that agreed to this, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, interesting to see what people come up with in terms of use cases.
Yeah, our other use cases, because we have a certain number of fields that sync, but there's also so many points in so many different departments that want to communicate through us that we don't have their points synced to merge in sometimes. So that would be perfect too, that we can upload specific values into these fields that are then just kind of hidden in that particular program, and no one else will see them, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. No, thanks for calling that out as well.
Guys, this is a little off topic. It's not really a question, but with the Netherlands user group, which is quite a small group, we have a WhatsApp group in where we share like interesting finds in Marketo or questions, or is it maybe an idea to start a WhatsApp group as well for the European version?
We actually have a Slack group. In the...
Oh, wait, it's on Slack.
Yeah, I'm in so many Slacks. Which one is it? Is it the Mobs Pro?
Yeah,
I'm in Mobs Professionals.
There's one in both.
So in Mobs Pros, there's a channel called
Mobs Area Europe.
There you go. Thank you.
Wait, browse channels. Let me see. Mobs Europe.
That's not just for Marketo though. That's for.
That's not from just me. It's marketing operations professionals in Europe, but in the. Sorry, my son's having a meltdown because he's hungry. There's another channel somewhere.
I cannot find it.
I'll invite you
have to be invited to it.
I'll invite you to it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think there's another one. It might just be just for the leaders. But yeah, but in the Mops Pro.
Oh, I have Mobs Area Europe. Here we go.
There you go. Yep.
Join channel. I found it.
Yep.
That's a lot more active than the Dutch WhatsApp group.
Yes.
It's not very.
I recommend
It
sticking to
doesn't get
Slack.
too much love.
Yeah, but it's just you know, nice to stay in touch. You know, not just the meetings, which are great, but
part of the I guess housekeeping rules again is to promote Purple Select. If those of you who aren't on it yet, go get some cool swag and become a Marketo advocate. Share your experience, your expertise, grow your brand, become a certified expert if you're not already one. And besides that, I'm actually going to say it's a good time to close it up. We've almost been going for an hour and 15 minutes. Pretty good one for first time, Warren.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful for all of you guys joining and some of the participation in some of the interesting discussions. So we're going to mix it up from kind of more technical to kind of working groups, and so we'll play it up a little bit. So so you'll hear from us soon, I guess.
Yeah, but thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Good meeting.
Have a nice day.
Okay.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.